Hello, everybody. I'm Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet, about to be joined by Ken Wiebe from Sportsnet. Together, we are Kenny and Renny, and this is the way later post-game show, the way post-game show after a Jets victory over the Edmonton Oilers to close out the 2022 calendar year. We thought we'd, in the theme of Ken showing up to the show late, we thought we would end 2022 having a really late show like this, just to make sure that, we wanted to clear the deck and allow everybody to have their Happy New Year parties and all those celebrations and be singing Auld Lang Syne. Rather than, doing the Kenny and Renny thing. So we pushed it back a little bit. Hope that works for everybody. We're appreciative of everyone who is able to show up at this point. I see there's some people populating the chat room. I know this was a little bit late as well. To announce that we were coming on the show here, but we're hoping this works for you. We want to make sure that we're honoring your time and our time and everybody's time, and at the same time giving people an avenue to talk about the Jets. And why not talk about them? Because there is another game that the Jets pulled off that I think falls into line again. One of the things I love about this show is I love it when we talk about things that kind of keep showing up time and time again, when we recognize themes on this show. And I think what we saw in that last game is a theme that's been recognized in this show. We talked before the Christmas break about the excuses that were going on around the Winnipeg Jets and the fact that they were injured. And again, a lot of people took contention with my idea that, they shouldn't be leaning into excuses. And people want to say these guys are injured. Yeah, they're playing these teams. Those guys are injured too, but they're not as injured as the Jets, or the people that are injured aren't as important, all that kind of stuff. To me, that's all noise. And the reason it's noise, and I went over this last time, is the Winnipeg Jets have enough to get by and survive the way a lot of other injured teams in the league are getting by and surviving. And I think that game against the Oilers is just another example of why a team can't lean into excuses rather than look and say, we've got what we need to survive this situation. That game over the Oilers, it's a Connor Hellebuyck special, playing absolutely great. But at the same time, it's another one of these ones, and I think this is a theme that we've been seeing this year. Yes, Connor Hellebuyck made a lot of nice saves, but I think a lot of those massive amount of shots that the Oilers were able to get looked like routine saves, and they look like routine saves, because Connor Hellebuyck is, the big boring style. When he's playing like that, a lot of his saves do look routine, but B, they looked routine because a lot of those saves were routine. I thought the Jets' defensive system was locked in and in a position where they were, I don't even call it bend but don't break, because I don't like that idea. The idea of the bend but don't break is essentially saying you're getting pumped and you're barely holding on. I never saw that from the Jets. I thought the Jets did a pretty good job of building a wall that players, on the Oilers couldn't really get past. So I don't think it's a bend but don't break situation. I think it's you can shoot from there all you want. If you decide to shoot from way out there, we're going to create this scenario where whatever gets through to our goaltender is going to be a lot easier for him to handle. And I thought it was one of those situations. And then you tack onto that the Jets, and we've said this before, Jets, if they're playing that defensive system, that gives them an opportunity to win every game. I still contend, despite all the injuries, there's enough stars on this team. The Kyle Connors, the Pierre-Luc Dubois, the Mark Scheifele's, the Josh Morrissey's. There are enough players on this team to pop up and make a difference when it matters most. And I thought that after the Oilers tied that game in the third period, and what it looked like at that stage, and what I bet you Oilers fans were feeling in that building was, okay, finally, the dam broke. Now we're going to win this game because we're out shooting them and we're out possessing them and all of these kind of things. And yet it's the Jets who go down and get that goal to win the game. And I take a look at this. One thing I admire like crazy about the Winnipeg Jets, again, talked about them getting into shooting lanes. Now a lot of their offense is coming from the point. Well, you take a look at how many times the Oilers tried to generate offense from the point and they just couldn't get shots through. One of the reasons why is because if you are pushing really hard to try to get to that front of the net and score, if you're doing a really great job of it, what ends up happening is the defender has to focus in on you and not the puck. So here's a perfect example. All those times that the Oilers are trying to get shots through, the Jets defenders are closing off that shooting lane and they've got an eye on the shooter. which allows them to position themselves in between the shooter and the goaltender and make it harder for that puck to get through. If you see what happened with Kyle Connor is going so mad just to try and get a stick on that his defender turns and is trying to keep him from getting away. But in doing so, is not looking at the point where the puck is coming from. He's looking where Kyle Connor is. He's turned towards the goaltender. And even though Kyle Connor, he almost gets the job done. He almost keeps Kyle Connor from touching that puck, but he doesn't quite. And one of the reasons why he's not in a position to block that shot and keep it from getting through is because Kyle Connor is fighting so hard to get his stick on that puck that the defender has to fight so hard to keep him from getting there. And to me, that's just where there's a will, there's a way. Who wanted it more in that situation? Kyle Connor wanted it more than any Oilers forward I saw throughout the game, trying to fight to get those tips in at the front of the net. And that to me is the difference in the game. The Jets, I will say it again, for all you people who want to roll out the excuses, even with everyone gone, and sure, more people can get injured and change this, but with all those bodies the Jets have out of the lineup, they still have enough to win when you've got the Rick Bowness defensive system that they play, when you've got a goaltender like Connor Hellebuyck, and when you have star power like this Jets team has remaining in the lineup. There's no excuses. This is a team that can survive this and do fine. I think it's a faith thing. I have faith in that situation. That's my take on that game. Let's bring in Kenny to see what his take is on the whole thing. The man with the best music in the business, who I'm hoping had a phenomenal New Year. Let's bring in the guy. Here comes Kenny. Kenny, my friend, you're looking good. You look like you didn't do too much damage to yourself for New Year's last night. I tried to do the same thing. How are you feeling today, my friend?
Excellent, Sean. Thanks. Happy New Year to all. Welcome to 2023. First of many shows on the Kenny and Renny show. Quiet night here. There was a family wedding, but that I did not attend. So home, it was a quiet evening at home, watching the Jets and getting some quick writing done, and then up in the morning to get the Weeb's World column up and running also. So plenty of work, but that's what we're here for. Also, if folks missed it, I had a look into the crystal ball, looking at some of the reasons why 2023 could be a critical year for the organization as a whole. I'll post the link a bit later, but interesting tilt on a lot of fronts for sure. Jets certainly not at their best, but overall, I would say that it was a pretty gutsy effort. I would say that the shot blocking element I thought was quite large, Sean. 20 shot blocks in the game for the Jets. Dylan Samberg, who had another bit of a miscue there on the Oilers' equalizer, did an exceptional job laying out for that Klim Kostin one-timer there. That was just an absolutely great play, and that's another example. We've talked a lot about it, Sean, and again, I know there's a lot of highlight things we're going to go into soon enough, but to me, that's another such an important part of the coaching and the coaching staff. So Dylan Samberg gets beaten off the wall by Matthias Janmark on the equalizer. David Gustafsson had won the draw cleanly behind him. That's a puck that needs to be A, possessed by the Jets, and B, that's a play where Samberg needs to be first to the puck. Sean, you played some defense in your career. Samberg not only has to get the puck, he should be able to either find somebody or wheel that puck behind the net and stabilize. Instead, he gets beaten off the boards. It gets, Klim Kostin gets behind Jansen Harkins. clear shot, clear lane, perfect shot, 1-1 tied hockey game. And some people will say, well, Harkins had inside position, maybe it wasn't his guy. Well, Sam Gagner went through. So one forward goes through, the second guy is in charge of the guy standing right beside him. So no matter whose fault it was, that's 2 missed plays by the Jets on what should have been a clean win. We hear Rick Bowness harping on faceoffs all the time. And the Jets should have won a faceoff. Instead, it ends up in the back of their net for a goal against. But instead of wilting after making a mistake like that or getting stapled to the bench, which is the immediate reaction of many coaches around the league, Sean, Dylan Samberg is asked to dig himself out of the hole. And we know that his confidence level is not at a high level because of the turnover he had on the first shift the other night that led directly to an Andrei Kuzmenko one-timer. So the fact that Dylan Samberg is on the ice in the last minute of a game where the Jets are killing off a double minor tells you what the coaches believe. They need Dylan Samberg to work himself through it. He has given him a chance to do so. And what does he do? He lays out and blocks a shot that maybe potentially prevents the game from getting to overtime. So to me, that whole sequence just sort of epitomizes how the Jets played. Like I said, I would go a little bit. I would go a little bit further. I think there were a few more high danger chances. I do think that because Hellebuck was so locked in, he made it look easier than it was for him.
Yeah.
The high dangers were pretty tilted in the Oilers' favor. 15-5 in terms of high danger chances. 5-on-5, 11-3. I didn't think the Jets generated a whole lot, but they made the most of their opportunities. And that is something that, that goes back to structure and all the things that you talked about in the opening. I mean, the Jets were able to survive because of their belief in the system and because a couple of their higher end players stepped up with big efforts when they really needed them to do so. And that's why they found a way to, not just squeeze out 1 point, which probably would have been a success, but took 2 points away from another one of those teams in the West that are trying to hunt them down. Not hunt them down in terms of their division or anything like that, but we talked last week after the loss to the Minnesota Wild that if the Jets lost any more games, they suddenly could find themselves in the wild card situation rather than in the top 3 in the Central. This way, much like they did against Vancouver in holding them back, the Jets were able to hold off the Oilers on a night where they did an excellent job of limiting the opportunities for Connor McDavid, who is the clear-cut MVP in the National Hockey League and had 5 points the night before. And hey, some people will say, oh, well, they played the night before. Well, guess what? The Jets have played plenty of back-to-backs already also, and they'll have plenty more to come. Anytime a team can shut down Connor McDavid or keep him off the board, that's a successful evening. And yes, of course, Leon Draisaitl was out of the lineup, and that makes a humongous difference for the Edmonton Oilers. But same thing, they don't stop playing just because one guy is out. So I thought there was some times where the Jets, didn't look like themselves, but for the most part, they found a way to dig deep and get the job done. And it was I don't think it was a secret. We didn't see the video of the post game, chat if there was one. But Rick Bowness and Kyle Connor both said good teams find a way to win. And the Jets, once again, proved they're a good hockey team. Even though they were outplayed, they found a way to get the job done. And that was no easy task, even though they were the team that should have been a little bit more rested and refreshed. The other thing that folks should also know, if they didn't look it up, Connor McDavid the night before had those 5 points in just over 16 minutes of ice time, because Jay Woodcroft knew that the Oilers had a back-to-back and knew that he would have to lean on Connor McDavid in that next night. So impressive. That's a good running man. It says it best here. This is not a Picasso, but a win is a win for the Jets. And, I'm with you, Sean. I think there were plenty of things to, was that their template for success? Absolutely not. But they found a way to win in terms of, when they didn't have their best, they did do a pretty good job in terms of their structure, and ultimately their high-end players made one more play than the Oilers' high-end players, and sometimes that's all a team needs to do in order to get the job done.
So I agree with you in a way. I disagree with you in a way. I'll say it like this: that's not the blueprint for success, to your point. But at the same time, I don't necessarily think that it's that's the blueprint for survival, right? Like the Jets last night have no intention of going out and saying we're going to play the game that is going to give us success in the playoffs right now. That's not what they're trying to do. They're going out and saying we are going to go out there and play the game that's going to allow us to survive in this moment in time where everybody's out. Like this wasn't a situation where at the beginning of the game, Kyle Connor, Pierre-Luc Dubois, Nick Ehlers are going out, and not Nick Ehlers, Mark Scheifele. If you can tell, I did have a couple of drinks last night. The brain is working kind of slowly here, but they didn't head out there being like, yeah, we're going to go and outshoot and really show Connor Hellebuyck what's what. This is one of those games where there's a piece of this game that doesn't change and shouldn't change, right? The defensive structure that they had here that they build off of was intact. And this part of their game is going to be intact if they're going to have success, is going to be intact going into the playoffs. It's that element of the game that Rick Bowness has said before, listen, if we play like that, we're going to have a chance to win every single night. And I honestly do think, Ken, I'm starting to think that at the beginning of December, maybe late into November, it was a good stat pulled by Jeff Hamilton. He said, I think it was around November 26th or something like that to the middle of December. No one scored more goals than the Jets. And it was kind of like, okay, the Jets are figuring out their offense under this system. But what I think is it was like the wagon started rolling down the hill and getting faster and faster. And then they started focusing in on offense again, as kind of getting away from that structure. This, to me, is the idea that when you've got that core defensive structure in place that they had in place against this team, that allows them to survive, that allows them to stay close, and that allows their opportunism to go in and win them games. We know that the opportunism exists. We've seen it there for a number of years. The problem in the past is the Jets would get themselves in trouble and try and dig themselves out of a hole with their opportunism. Now they're having faith that their defensive system will keep them in a game and that their opportunism will not score their way back into a game, but will win them the tight games like that. And that's what it is, right? Because the Jets, basically, to your point, really didn't have much of anything last night, but when they had something, they did something with it, right? So I do think to a degree that is like, I think that was the game plan last night. I think the Jets executed exactly what they wanted to execute. I don't think, other than that start, which we should talk about, those starts, they're kind of ridiculous. Here's one thing I think is interesting. This is another game, Ken, where they get a goal. I believe it was on their third shot of the game.
It was, yes.
And if I'm not crazy, I think in their last 5 games, or is it 6 games, 4 or 5 of their goals, they've scored their first goal with under 5 shots, right? So they go out and it's starting to be, and I do think this is one of the things that the Jets kind of got to figure out here, because it does seem a little problematic to me. And they have this problem even when no one's injured and everyone's in the lineup. But the Jets, for some reason, are getting caved in to start games where they're not getting shots. I don't know if that's them just saying, let's get down defensively and hunker down and allow some long distance shots, not really push it down the ice. But they seem to be able to score goals with, 1 or 2 shots to start a game. And that's what we've been seeing over the last number of games, to the point, Ken, I called our stats department. I got to say this, the Sportsnet stats, if you don't follow them on Twitter, you should. They're phenomenal. And one thing, we've got this stats department where I can go and try and find any kind of crazy stat I want. And I'll just email them and say, could you find me this stat? And they'll go do all the research and they'll get you an answer like that. So I was thinking this last number of games, Ken, where would you think the Jets rank in as far as the average amount of shots it takes for them to score their first goal of the game? Give me an idea. Give me a number.
I would say it's low, but I'm not. I mean, I don't know. It's an interesting tilt for sure. A stat. We're going to debate that a little bit too in terms of the Pionk goal, but I would say they're high. I mean, they're an opportunistic team at times. They're not.
So okay, it blew me.
There you go.
Because I'm looking at all these games that they're getting. Like, it was at Boston. They had a shot on their second.
Phyllis. Depends who the other goalie is, how early you score sometimes too, I guess, and the quality of shot, course. Right? So
of course, but I'm just thinking, like, that Boston game, they had a goal on their second shot of the game. This last game, a goal on their
third but I mean, Scheifele's all alone. I mean, the quality of opportunity is pretty good.
Of course. But the point I'm trying to make is I thought the Jets would have been one of the best teams in the league at coming out and getting a goal on one of their first couple of shots, because that's what we've seen over the last 5 or 6 games. Now, it was a number of games ago, but when I had them check them, they were actually 23rd in the league.
Oh.
When it came to scoring on the least amount of shots before you got your first goal. So I was kind of blown away by it. I thought they would have been top 10 easily. I thought they would have been top 5. They actually aren't that good when it comes to the rest of the league at getting a goal right out of the gates, but that's sure not what we've seen so far in this last month of December. We'll see if it continues on in January. I did want to touch on a point of yours again and bring this up with Kevin Sawyer. I brought him up on the show before, the TSN analyst, on-ice analyst. And your point about Dylan Samberg and how he had that egregious mistake last game that led to that goal for the Canucks, and then the issues that he's having right now, a young player trying to figure things out. He came in and did a really good job of kind of cementing himself as one of the guys in the lineup, and now seems to be, getting into that. Now it's the grind, right? Now what you got to do is you're not just in the league. Now you got to find consistency in the league, and he's having some issues here or there. To Kevin Sawyer's point, and I want to make sure he gets credit for this because he's the one who brought it to my attention, but he really likes the way that Rick Bowness doesn't take guys out of the lineup as a punishment. Like, you don't fail your way out of the lineup. To your point, they give you some time to work it out. And if you're going to come out of the lineup, you'll usually come out of the lineup after being somewhat successful, right? And the importance of that is you pull a guy out of the lineup who's been doing okay, and you get to say to him, look, it's just your turn to come out of the lineup. We're not taking you out. Don't sit here and, feel bad or whatever, or like you failed us. Just, it's your turn to come out of the lineup. And I like that idea. I like the idea of a coach that takes a guy out of the lineup on a high so that he doesn't, it doesn't affect his confidence, rather than taking a guy out on a low, and allowing that guy to ruminate on that and get disappointed about that. I really like the way they do that.
Well, I mean, you can't have competition, though, if you're not taking the guy that's playing the, when it comes to the Jets forward group. I mean, Michael Asimon came out because he had a rough go the night before, right? I mean, I just don't think that it's universally applied in this case. I do agree with you as the whole, but the Jets also don't have another defenseman to put into their lineup right now. I guess they have Kyle Capobianco. That's sorry. I mean, I like the point. I think playing through it is critical. Gagne, I wouldn't say he got benched, but he definitely got pushed down the lineup, and same with Harkins. After that miscue, I don't think he played another shift. Maybe he had one. Yeah, this is a way. I like the bonus guides his players back to redemption. I just don't think it means that you stay in the lineup even if you're struggling. You're going to have to come out of the lineup. I mean, he's also not going to say you can't play. That's why you're coming out. He's going to say, build on the things that you're good at, and just take a look and take a deep breath. But yeah, I mean, I think that Dylan Samberg is a guy the Jets are going to need, and they need him exactly where they played him at the end of the game. I mean, they needed him, especially with Brendan Dillon in the box serving a double minor for high-sticking Kyler Yamamoto, which was, just bad luck. He's trying to take a guy into the boards, his stick rides up in the battle, and it draws blood, and it's a double minor. I mean, Brendan Dillon is an important penalty killer. He was not available. Dylan Samberg is an important penalty killer. He's out there to block shots. He's out there to get clears. And he was given the confidence in order to do that. So, I mean, I agree with you and Kevin's point in the general sense. But I mean, it's still, if you're telling players there's a competition, I mean, sometimes guys are going to have to sit out because they're not playing at a high enough level. Whether that means they're playing poorly or not is kind of up for debate. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, not just sitting someone down and expecting them. How do you expect a player to play through it if he's not given an opportunity to get the Jets or to get back on the ice to learn from the mistake? I think that's something we're seeing lately from Ville Heinola and Dylan Samberg, both of whom the Jets are going to need to lean on here for a little bit longer.
Hey, let's get at some a little bit of our sponsors here. Let's start off with Vittorio Rossi. Again, we can't show off what we've been doing here, but I think people have seen enough how good the boys Vittorio Rossi make us look. So if you're interested in suits, ties, shirts, and really the one area that I'm always eyeing up when I go there, their casual wear is just absolutely gorgeous. Boy, oh boy, that's the kind of place where if you could just get in there and have like a limited credit card to go, that would be a
unlimited.
Unlimited. Yeah. So if you want to go, if you want to start 2023 looking like $1 million, I know the guy for you. Head on down to Vittorio Rossi over on Corden Avenue. Go see Frankie and the boys at Vittorio there. They will do you up right. Make sure you tell them Kenny and Renny sent you. Ken, what was your Lamplighter?
Yeah, for me, it's the Neil Pionk goal, and not because of the finish from Neil Pionk. And I want to get into this with you a little bit more because I know that both Kelly Rudy and Kevin Bieksa shared a different viewpoint of the goal than Elliot Friedman did. And as I told the guys last night, I generally side with Kevin Bieksa on a lot of issues, but I'm Team Friedman on this one here. But not just because of the goal and the finish. I think the whole play was set up brilliantly. Great zone entry by Mark Scheifele, comes in with speed, attacks the blue line, pushes the Oilers back on the power play, gets the puck along the wall to Pierre-Luc Dubois. Dubois makes a really smart play to get it to Kyle Connor. And Kyle Connor, because Jack Campbell has to respect the shooting ability of Kyle Connor, he opens up the backhand pass for Neil Pionk. I think Pionk heals it on the one-timer, Sean. I don't think it turns it into a changeup, and it gets through the pads of Jack Campbell, who was expecting a blast. And then I think it would have been stopped if he's squared up in that situation. But I think because of the change-up nature, and I'm not saying it's not an easy shot because of where the pass was. Pionk did his job. I just don't think he hit the one-timer the way he wanted to, which is what opened up the 5-hole on Campbell and allowed the puck to kind of bank in through the wickets.
Let's call it what it is. That's bad goaltending, right? Like you come across and you're supposed to close all the holes, right? Like you make a guy beat you, you don't have open wickets in a situation like that. Like that is a shot that's
well,
not
they weren't open when if it was a good shot, the 5-hole wouldn't have been open. That's my point. It only opens up after because it's a changeup.
Yeah, it's bad goaltending. Like Connor Hellebuck does not let that shot in. Not 99 times out of 100, Connor Hellebuck does not let that shot in. This is the issue that the Oilers have been dealing with all year. They've got goaltenders that find a way. I mean, he puts that smack dab in the middle of the net right now. Regardless of what you say about it, this is one of those things. You liken that goal let in by a goaltender to being like either a wide receiver in football or a fielder in baseball. If you can reach it and you're a pro, you should catch it, right? That's how it goes. If it's in your hands,
Friedman also,
you catch it,
your
right?
Team Friedman also.
For sure,
I snipe. Okay.
Yeah, no, that was no snipe. He's got a
2-0. He's got the full support of Kenny and Renny on this one
entirely, which he usually does. I do have to say that for the most part, like Elliot really does not miss very often, I find. And this is one of those situations that I see like that. There's nothing nice or pretty about that shot. That's a guy firing something on net.
It's a pretty play, though. It's still a pretty play that opens up
it's a really pretty play for sure. That's great passing. And I mean, the nicest of the passes is Pierre-Luc Dubois, the way he's able to get it off the boards and find the guy in speed. I'm just saying that this is one of these situations. And someone said here that if Skinner was in net, I mean, I've got time for that argument, but hey, this is what it is, right? Like the Jets are able to play the style of game they played last night because they've got Connor Hellebuck in net, right? Well, that's the tools that you have. You use your tools to the best of your ability. Right now, the tools for the Oilers are problematic. And again, I'll say that a million times, for that puck to go through in that situation, that's a bad goal, period, is the way that I take a look at that. But you know what? I think that Kyle Connor's game winner is the Lamplighter, because I just think that the effort on that, the way that how often do you see a guy one hand dive out as they fight a defender that's doing everything to keep him there? I mean, the fight to get his stick on that puck is something else, right? And I've always thought this is amazing. I don't know, Ken, if you played hockey with a lot of guys who could like deflect the puck but kind of know where they were deflecting it. I'm not saying that in that situation it's anything other than him just getting his stick on the puck.
I think two quick things. It's the willingness to get to the blue paint.
Yes.
And then getting inside position on Brett Kulak. Kulak thinks he has him covered. And
totally.
Connor finds a way to get inside, and then it's not just sticking his hand out and waving it like an abracadabra here, magic stick. He touches it. He goes down to create the dip. I mean, that's an outstanding play. Sorry to interrupt, but then that's tremendous job by Kyle Connor in terms of precision, that's definitely a prettier goal. I just thought that the effort for a Jets power play that has struggled at times with zone entries, I chose that one as my lamplighter initially, but I got all day for Kyle Connor as your selection also.
I just think it's like Kyle Connor is not the biggest guy, right? And he is not what you would think of as a net front presence, right? And yet he made a bigger impact in that game than any of the bigger guys out there. And again, this is one of these situations where I think that the Jets, despite the fact that I very clearly will say the Jets were the second best team out on the ice there, but they had the better game plan and they wanted it more at the right times, right? Like there were not Oilers forwards who are creating the chaos in front of the Jets net the way that Kyle Connor does in that play. And again, I don't know. I don't think he weighs 200 pounds. He's not the biggest guy, but he throws everything he has at that. This is the equivalent, again, if we're going to use football analogies, this is the equivalent of a wide receiver diving full out, full extension and catching the ball in midair, with one hand on the fingertips and bringing it in. That's the same kind of play that we're seeing from Kyle Connor here. He wanted it more than anyone else out on the ice last night. And that's why the Winnipeg Jets are talking about, putting a little bit more distance between they and a team chasing them in the standings, and talking about, oh no, okay, well, we lost 3, we won 1, but now we've lost 4 of our last 5. And what would it be? I don't know, like 9 of their last 11 or 14 or whatever it is. Entirely different feeling in the dressing room. I think that the Jets now are fully back into the idea that this structure is going to save them. And I think that they got to it in the second period against Vancouver. They stayed with it through the rest of that game, and they stayed with it through all 3 periods. This is 5 straight periods of the Jets rediscovering the Rick Bowness structure, and they're finding ways to win with it. And I fully expect to see the same thing against the Calgary Flames. We'll see if they prove me right or not. I just wanted to give a shout out, though, of course. If you are interested in sharing your Lamplighter of the game with us, the goal of the game, well, if you do so, you open yourself up to the possibility of winning an 8-pack of Frosty Delicious Lamplighter Amber Ale. If you can't wait for us to hand it out to you, though, like a lot of you haven't been able to, head on down to TransCanada Brewing Company. Go to their tap room at 11290 Kenniston. You can get that there. They got a lot of other beers. They got the great pizza. They got the great appetizers. It is a little bit of a Shangri-La for me, so I believe it will be for you. Go check it out, everybody. Let's get to the Johnston Group Got You Covered play of the game, Ken.
Yeah, I mentioned a couple times now and right out of the gate, Dylan Sandberg's block late in the game for me is the we've got you covered play. There were plenty of strong efforts throughout the course of the game, but to me, given all the circumstances and some of the tough shifts that Sandberg has had to persevere, his ability to lay out and block that one-timer from Klim Kostin, to me, is the Lamplighter out there, sacrificing his body on a night where the Jets had 20 blocks, including 3 from Sandberg. His late game block for me is my We've Got You Covered play of the game, sponsored by the OGs, our good friends at the Johnston Group.
Good stuff. And like you said, the OGs, so happy to have them on board. You won't find 2 businesses with the same challenges, but you will find 30,000 businesses with Chambers Plan employee benefits, proudly administered by our friends at Johnston Group. Chambers Plan is Canada's #1 plan for employee benefits because it evolves with the way you work and live. The plan is run as a not-for-profit designed specifically to support small businesses, and its unique pooling strategy keeps rates stable, so you won't have any surprises at your next renewal. Chambers Plan now comes with professional consulting on key financial, legal, and HR issues, and Teladoc telemedicine services are included with every health option. See how Chambers Plan can benefit your business by visiting chamberplan.ca. And Ken, I realized that I didn't announce the Lamplighter winner from the last show, so let's get to that. Savage 09100, who I notice is in the chat room. You are the Lamplighter winner from the last show. So congratulations. You know what you got to do. You just direct message me at SN Sean Reynolds on Twitter, or find some other way to get a hold of me. I need your full name because Savage 09100, I'm fairly certain
would be a great name, though. It would be a fantastic name.
For sure. Savage. That would be a savage name. I need your full name. I need an email to send you your voucher, and then I'll be able to do that, and you'll be able to head on down to TransCanada Brewing Company and pick up your own Frosty Delicious 8-pack of Lamplighter Amber Ale. Congratulations, Savage09100, who I saw you in the chat room. And I just got to say, I'm looking at here, we have almost 200 people in the chat room here. I think there's probably some people enjoying their coffee the way that I am, maybe a slow morning bleeding into the afternoon, but we thank you so much for joining us here. It means a ton to us. Let's move on. I wanted to bring up something people were talking about, and you had the wherewithal to point out McDavid's ice time the previous game. I know you know this about me. I'm hooked. I'm fully hooked on Arneal's talk about the Jets system and how it saps their competition of their confidence. And I thought Ken, the Hockey Night in Canada camera guys, did a really great job of getting a lot of bench shots last night. The reactions of the Oilers, who I thought consistently looked frustrated and maybe a little bit hopeless in the middle of that game. Not a lot of chatter on that bench. I thought right down by the stretch, there was a great camera shot of Connor McDavid. And I was thinking, this is a 1-goal game. You're about to head down. We know you're going to pull the goaltender. We know you're getting primed to get an opportunity to try and tie up this game. And maybe I haven't seen enough Oilers games to kind of gauge his body language. But I thought that he looked somewhat defeated on the bench. And I thought that last night was another example of, if you look in the faces of a team that starts questioning their confidence and their abilities. To me, in that moment, what that shot looked like to me, especially when they showed it stacked against the home scoring streak that he was on and trying to tie up Gretzky for, I think it was 10 straight games with the home scoring streak. That looked like a guy who was very much realizing that he was probably going to fall short of that record.
Yeah, I don't agree. I thought that generally McDavid was, once again, the Jets did a pretty good job against him, and he was sour. Roy Mack, yeah, I don't doubt that. But I think the Hockey Night also showed the night before, when they had a 5-goal lead, it was 5-0, and he had the same look in his face when they came out for the third period.
He's got a little bit of a Blake Wheeler thing going on, where he just he doesn't get too high or too low. Like Blake Wheeler could have just scored like 5 goals on the night, and it's not often you get a smile out of him. He usually looks pretty stern, and like even the live shots of him out on the ice, he's got that same kind of face going on. So I do agree with you that McDavid has a little bit of a poker face, but at the same time, I'm seeing what everybody else is seeing here. Jay Miller says it as well. He thought that way as well. But
it didn't show in his play, was my only point. I mean, I agree with you. He looked sour. There's no doubt about that. I don't think that he was frustrated or defeated. He was pissed off that he rattled his best chance off the post. But this was not a guy who was having trouble generating. He was flying. He was drawing penalties. The play that he made, that Ryan Nugent-Hopkins shot off the side of the net on a backdoor 1T, I think there was maybe some frustration, that his line mates or himself were not able to convert. I didn't think that he looked like a man. I have no idea how we're going to bust this system. I mean, this is a guy who basically broke the Jets season last year when he went 1-on-4 and went through and scored. I mean, that basically was the tipping point for where the Jets, that game went to overtime, and the Jets their season kind of tailspinned after that for the most part. But hey, like I said before, anytime a team can keep Connor McDavid off the board, it's a success. So is it the perfect template? No. Did they need a couple breaks, like a post or something here and there? Did they need Connor Hellebuyck to make a few good saves against him and others? Of course. I mean, to me, McDavid was pretty impressive still. 4 shots on goal, 6 attempts. Like I said, I think at least 3 of them were dangerous chances. And when the puck is on his stick, it's dangerous for, the opposition, because it either can be, all he needs usually is one chance. And last night that didn't end up being the case. But no, I agree. I mean, he didn't look happy, but to me, Connor McDavid rarely looks happy. The only times I see him look really happy is in overtime, when he either scores or his line mates score and his team wins, then you get a smile. But, Connor's not generally dropping a lot of smiles in interviews or on ice competition, except in the playoffs, where we saw him, when he scored early in game 3 in the opening minute. There you saw the guy, electrify a crowd and maybe dump a little smile. But generally speaking, he has the game face on. So And again, I know you're big into body language, and I do agree in a lot of areas. Yes, but I don't think, to me, he seemed frustrated, but I didn't see any sense of him being defeated or making plays that he wouldn't normally try to make because he was confused or discombobulated by the way the Jets were playing him. They were playing him hard, but I think there were also a couple scenarios where maybe the Jets were fortunate that McDavid didn't break through. And the other problem there is that when McDavid gets one, often he gets several. So
right.
That's why it was even more important for the Jets to keep him off the board. And the other big thing, Sean, Oilers' power play is the best power play in the league. It has been for a couple of years here. The Jets were 5 for 5 against them. No, they didn't have to roll out the full double minor for Brendan Dillon because the time expired, but they still did an exceptional job. If any team goes 5 for 5 against the Oilers, that's impressive work because their power play, especially when Draisaitl is playing, can be very dangerous and occasionally lethal. So that was another sign of the Jets finding a way to persevere because, we know it. Rick Bowness said going into the game with Paul Edmonds, you can't take penalties against the Oilers or they'll bury you. And the Jets were fortunate that they were not buried by the Oilers' lethal power play in that game. But they had a lot to say about that because of their ability to, get in lanes and block shots. But I did see quite a few dangerous chances from the Oilers in that game as well.
I'll say this. I am a body language guy. I like to read into that kind of stuff. And here's the problem with that is when you don't know players extremely well. And that's why I brought up the idea that maybe I don't see enough Oilers hockey with that. Like, if you don't know the guys, sometimes you can't pick up on that. But to me, I know what you're talking about. There's like a very, it's almost like he's wearing a mask, right? He's fairly expressionless even when he scores. I just think, Ken, that if we go back and what we witnessed when the Jets beat the Oilers 4 straight in those playoffs, I just remember there were times, and this is the one that really stands out to me, is when Ethan Bear threw that terrible giveaway that Blake Wheeler pounced on, and the Jets tied up that game in the 4th game, and they would eventually go on to win that in overtime. Right away, the cameras trained on McDavid on the bench at that point, and you could just see this look on his face of like, I can't do everything, right? Like, we can't just be doing this. So I do think that mask that he has, there's little glints that show through, and he didn't look like a guy who was just going about his business to me last night. He looked like a guy that was like, maybe a little bit frustrated. And here I thought that this really showed it. So when the net was empty, there was one point where they get it down in the zone and they're really trying to get the puck to Connor McDavid. And Connor McDavid starts with the puck on the right defensive side and skates and tries to cut into the middle because that's what he does. When he's at his best, he picks up a little bit of speed and then slices and dices through everybody and then gets in and shoots. And the Jets just, I go back to them building that wall around the inside of the ice. The Jets he started skating and he just kept skating more and more and more. And next thing you know, he was on the far boards because he was just getting shepherded off to the side into a very undangerous place. And to me, that just was a real example of, I think, when you can get star players on the other team, and the Jets were doing this in the first period against the Vancouver Canucks, and they were doing it against the Minnesota Wild all game. When you get stars on the other team trying to skate through the opposition, that's when you know you're winning, right? When they're not like having confidence and trying to find their other guys, when they're like, God, I'll just do it myself, right? That's what I think they forced Connor McDavid into in that last game. You know what? I'm just going to do it myself because nothing else is working. I'm just going to try and skate this through myself. And the thing about Connor McDavid is we know he can do it himself, but at the same time, if you get him into the mindset where that's what he's trying over and over again, that's when I think you've won. I think he was already there. I think that last play just showed that he wasn't going to give up the puck. He was going to try and do it himself. And I think that mindset is one of a guy who doesn't think that there's passing lanes, who doesn't think that that even if he does get the puck through to somebody else, that they're going to have room to shoot. So the game is better off on his stick. And I think that was just, to me, that was another example of the confidence of him and his team's system and his teammates was stolen away from him by the way that the Winnipeg Jets were playing. I love that line by Arniel. I did want to ask you about this live on the show. We haven't talked about this.
I mean, Yamamoto did hit the post in like the last 5 seconds, so it's not like the system was foolproof. I mean, they still generated a great chance late. Sorry, not 5 seconds, but in the last 30 seconds.
I truly do think that was one of those "that's all that was left to him" situations. Like I don't think he barely missed. Like there was nowhere else to go. Connor Hellebuyck had that entirely covered up, I thought. I wanted just before we move on, I wanted to ask you this. Rick Bowness, when I asked him about Scott Arniel talking about their system stealing the confidence away from their opposition, he didn't seem to like it when I asked that question. I'm not sure that he likes that language.
Sorry, say again. Oh, yes, about the.
You know what I'm talking about? So to go just to rewind,
playing aggressively. Yes,
I asked him about the system, and Scott Arniel said, when we do what we're doing properly, what we do is we steal the confidence away from the other team. And I love that line because I think that that's what we see. But when I asked Rick Bowness about that and said, like, is that Arniel's words? Is that your words? And is that how you see this system or what the system is designed to do? And my take on it, Ken, was he didn't like that. He didn't like that that language. And I don't think he wanted to go down that road. I'm not sure if you picked up on the same thing I picked up on.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's he just might not have been expecting it. Maybe I'm not reading too much into it, but
well, it tells me that he doesn't use that language. Don't you think? Like whether or not he was expecting it or not. If this is something
shoulder shrug for me, I mean, I didn't react the same way. I mean, I thought that Rick got annoyed a little bit, and I mean, you talked a couple days in a row about the importance of playing with. Taking the puck back, not just kind of playing a passive game. And Rick kind of looked at you like, well, what do you want us to do here? I mean, he didn't want to say it, but it was one of those things where, they were missing pieces, and it seemed like he thought you were trying to back him into a corner, but I thought it was completely fair game because the Jets completely played differently against Vancouver than they did against Minnesota. So obviously something was different. So, and what was different was that they made life way more difficult on the Canucks defensemen, something they really didn't do against the Wild in that first game out of the break. So, yeah, I mean,
hey, I want you to give Lou a shout out, and then I want to handle this question by BA Split. So I'm just going to do a little tease here. BA says, Renny says, even with all the players out, they have the talent to win. I didn't say win most games, but I think they have the talent to be in those games, and they have the talent to survive the way that we've seen teams like the Colorado Avalanche and the Washington Capitals survive. I'm one of these guys that it rubbed me the wrong way when people were saying, well, no, we're losing because of this and because of that and because of excuse. Those are still games that the Jets can win, and I think it's, again, I'll say this, I think it's disrespectful to the guys in the line to suggest that, like, what, Mark Scheifele, Pierre-Luc Dubois, Adam Lowry, Josh Morrissey, Connor Hellebuyck, those guys aren't capable of winning games because Saku Menelainen and Mason Appleton and players like that are out of the lineup. I think it's a ridiculous assertion, to be honest. But BA Split says, Renny says, even with all the players out, they have the talent to win most games. So when healthy, how good is this team? Playoff good for sure. I'm just going to say playoff good is obvious to me at this stage, but we'll dig into this question after Kenny gives a shout out to our main man, Luke.
Sure, and Vegas is another team that's playing, with 6 or 7 guy regulars out of the lineup also. So exactly. And they're battling for first over in the Western Conference with Dallas.
Exactly. So, I've hated the excuse train.
I mean, yes. For the folks in the if you're looking to buy, sell, if you got some interest in realty, you're maybe looking at a different part of the city to move into or whatever else. Whether you're just looking at the value of your home. Or knowing what it's worth or what other places are going for, you can contact our main man, Lou Ferlin at Royal LePage Dynamic Realty. You can reach him at 204-791-9971 or at the office 204-989-5000. His email is lou@louferlin.ca. That's LOU@LOUFURLAN.ca. And Lou's website is www.louferlin.ca. Great human being, excellent realtor, and all around, proud supporter of our program, and we appreciate his support. And like I said, if you have any real estate needs whatsoever, Lou's your guy.
Thank you, and Happy New Year to sweet Lou. Okay, let's bring that question up again here if I still have it. How good do you think this team is when healthy, Ken, at this stage? I mean, have we seen it already earlier in the year, or is there somewhere else for them to go?
Well, I would say that that's still TBA. The Jets have played 2 games with one of their most impactful forwards. That's not to take anything away from all of those players that you mentioned already having excellent years, whether that's Josh Morrissey on the back end or up front with Kyle Connor, who's had an exceptional month, Sean. I mean, Kyle Connor, 8 goals and 22 points in the month of December. 16 games this month. Kyle Connor, who had 2 goals in the first 13 games, he's just been on an exceptional run. Pierre-Luc Dubois has been excellent. Blake Wheeler, before he got hurt, excellent. Adam Lowry, excellent. But we don't know where the pieces fit when all the pieces are healthy. We don't know if all the pieces are going to get healthy at the same time. Cole Perfetti had a great start as a rookie before he got hurt recently as well. But what we do know is that their structure combined with the talent up front and the goaltending of Connor Hellebuck and the overall team play has given them a plan and a blueprint and a template that could potentially have success in a playoff scenario. What we need to know is, where are they going to finish in the Central Division? I mean, are you going to finish first if you're the Winnipeg Jets? Are you going to finish third? It's a big difference. I mean, who would they have to play in the playoffs? I mean, the beauty of the Western Conference and even the Eastern Conference this year is that there's a lot of great teams. Every year, a really good team, sometimes 2 or 3 really good teams go home in the first round. So how good are they going to be? I mean, that to me is TBA. But what we know is that their structure and their belief and their ability, if they can ever line that up with full health, I do think they're a team that can win multiple rounds. Can they win 4 rounds? To me, Sean, we won't know if the Jets can win 4 rounds until we see what happens before March 3rd. That's my personal view. I think it's a massive, we've talked about this often on the show, what Kevin Cheveldayoff does in terms of trying to set his team up and pushing all his chips into the middle for this playoff run, and then in the summertime, how some of those pieces shake out is massive for this franchise. But I do think they are playoff good. Whether they can win 2 rounds or 4, and again, I'm not saying they're automatic to win 2 rounds because nobody's automatic, but I do think they can win multiple rounds. There is room for improvement if they want to try to win 4 rounds, because Sean, you and I were on site last year. Do we think right now, without making a trade at the deadline, that the Jets could have beaten the Tampa Bay Lightning or the Colorado Avalanche last spring?
No.
I don't think so. I mean, I think they could have given them a run, but I don't think you can say right now, look at this roster and say the Jets are better than either one of those teams that was involved in a 6-game Stanley Cup final.
I mean, I think the quick answer to that is that I don't think either of those teams are that this year either, although maybe the Tampa Bay Lightning are. You got to think at some point, shouldn't age be catching up with that team? I guess not. I mean, Blake Wheeler is still going at 36. Should we be thinking that a younger Steve Stamkos is going to be slowing down? He was phenomenal in the playoffs last year, and what a warrior he's turned into. I wanted to respond with this because based on this question, a comment by one of our viewers has won the Home Field Dig Deeper Award in my mind. I wanted to say this. Ken, this is kind of what I was getting at. I appreciate Scardy here. Scardy picked up on this. Stealing confidence is probably getting close to bulletin board material. This is what I was getting at and asking you with this. I think that when Scott Arniel said that, rather than being like, we're just playing our system and whatever, and this is how we play, but the idea that you are stealing a team's confidence is kind of like, yeah, what we do is we go out and we take their lunch money, right? So I think that language, I don't think Rick Bowness wanted to respond to that, because I don't think Rick Bowness wants other people out there thinking like, yep, we just stole your confidence, right? It's a little bit in your face. So I think Scardy absolutely nailed this. But when I'm talking about the Home Field Dig Deeper Award, Baba Jet says you won't steal the confidence from some of the teams in this league. Good luck doing that to Vegas, Boston, or Tampa. That, for me, is the Dig Deeper award of the game. And this is why I think that the Winnipeg Jets, okay, in my mind, there's no doubt the Winnipeg Jets are a playoff team. I know you and I had a conversation about this the other day. To me, it's not even an afterthought. I think the Jets are going to the playoffs. There's no problems here with this issue. And the reason why is because of this whole idea. you can steal confidence away from teams like the Vancouver Canucks, as good as they were on the road, because you can see, like, what was the reaction that happened in that game with JT Miller yelling at his goaltender, slashing at the back of the net? Like, these are the actions of teams that are like, come on, they're not on the same page, right? So if you can go out and take a team that can easily fall off the same page, or another way I take that is that you can like take the confidence away from a team like that because they're not maybe as structured or on the same page or whatever. You can break those teams. And I think that ability by the Jets to play that defensive style has set them apart. It's made them a have in a league of haves and have-nots. The haves being the teams that can get into the playoffs, the have-nots being the teams that can't. That to me, that separates the Jets, because what I've seen from the Jets this year is when they play that system, the have-nots get broken by that system. And if you can break the have-nots over and over and over again, you are going to get into the playoffs, period. So that's why I land there. But this is my question, Ken. What Baba Jet says, you won't steal the confidence from some of the teams in this league. Good luck doing that to Vegas, Boston, or Tampa. That system and the ability to break and steal the confidence from teams only takes you so far, because to Baba Jet's point here, really good teams are good because they don't take bad times and allow it to sap their confidence. They know that they can stick with this and, like, okay, they shut us out in the first period. They shut us out in the second period. There's still another period for us to figure this out. And if it's a 7-game series, well, maybe you get shut out for games 2 and 3, but those are the kind of teams that are like long series. Like if you remember, we were there covering Stamkos last year when they went down in those first 2 games against the Colorado Avalanche and looked like they were going to get run out of the building. And then they came back and looked phenomenal for most parts of the next 3 games. Even though they didn't win, that's a team that fought their way back in, because you can't steal the confidence of the Tampa Bay Lightning. You can't steal the confidence of the Colorado Avalanche, to the point that Baba Jet makes here. So that's my question, and where I completely and totally agree with you, and why I go back to the idea that, to me, the Jets lineup as it stands is not a Stanley Cup winning lineup. It's a lineup that's going to get into the playoffs. It could make some noise in the playoffs. This is, again, why I go back to the idea that I think this needs to be the very best trade deadline that Kevin Cheveldayoff has ever had. He needs to take a big swing, because I think you need to build the kind of lineup that we saw for years with the Tampa Bay Lightning, with the Colorado Avalanche last year. You need to build the kind of lineup that when you look at it, you think like, oh my God, we get through Mark Scheifele, and then we somehow get through Pierre-Luc Dubois, and now we got to face player X or player Y or whoever on top of that. Like that's my idea, is like, go back to the Pittsburgh Penguins of 2015 and 16. I mean, when you've got Phil Kessel rolling off the bench with Nick Bonino and Carl Hagelin, who at that time was just an absolute speed demon, and Nick Bonino, who's a really great defensive forward, and Phil Kessel, who has the capability to lead the playoffs in scoring that year, and that's your third line. Like, that's to the point that Ken just made about what he and I covered last year. That's the kind of depth you need to win in the playoffs. Not every year. I don't think that the Blues had that kind of depth. The Blues had a really great system to play off of, with really great players who fit into that system and who really fit a specific identity of that team. But that's a defensive grind team. If the Jets, who are really good defensively, want to grind teams out all the way to the Stanley Cup final, I don't think that, they have the size on the back end to do that. I don't think they have the size up front to punish teams and do that. So to me, they're caught a little bit in the middle of, are we a really tough grinding lineup? Are we a skill lineup? I think they're a good mixture of both, but I think that you need to become more dominant and have more depth down the middle if you're gonna pull that off and go all the way to the cup.
Yeah, I mean, my only point would be St. Louis played all 4 lines, and they were not afraid to play the Steen and Barbashev against Patrice Bergeron. So I mean,
because those guys were the true to form. What the Jets are saying about, like, every line needs to look the same,
for sure.
Like, every single one of those lines played the exact same style of hockey. That is probably the greatest example, maybe in the history of the NHL, of what Rick Bowness is saying about a team identity. Every single line looked the same. Like, they all scored the same kind of goals. Didn't matter how skilled some players were. If it's Ryan O'Reilly or Barbashev, they were still scoring the same kind of goals. during that run because they had a very locked-in identity. I don't think the Jets can be that because Saku Menelainen is not Nick Ehlers or Kyle Connor, right? Like they're
no. I just think that the thing with St. Louis, I agree. I just think that they were still getting – the Jets are getting fourth-line play. They're not getting the same level of – they need to elevate their fourth-line and third-line contributions to a degree in order to get to the place St. Louis got to. Yeah. And Sean, you and I saw it against Dallas. Every time Craig Berube and even to a degree, Jim Montgomery, every time they went to the healthy scratch pool, somebody came in and played great, right? I mean, totally. The Jets are building that right now by having to handle these injuries where they're playing a bunch of guys in terms of guys who got called up from the Moose or were claimed off waivers or, great example yesterday, Christian Reichel. I mean, we're almost done here, but I think we got to give a little bit of love to Christian Reichel.
Yes.
5-day Christmas break. Has one practice with the Jets, one morning skate, starts on the fourth line and ends up the game playing on the top line with Pierre-Luc Dubois and Kyle Connor, and he set up Neil Pionk again, I thought that Christian Reichel made a bunch of just simple little plays, and Sean, I know you picked up on it. Earlier this week when Rick Bowness was asked about Christian Reichel, he said one of the reasons he was called up was because of his ability to be a right-hand shot on the strong side and chip pucks out of the zone, because a lot of the left-handers that were asked to play on the right side were having trouble exiting when the defenseman pinches down. Reichel, on one of his first couple shifts, made a simple play where all he does was change the elevation of his stick that's on the ice to chip the puck past the incoming defenseman. That doesn't end up on the stat sheet, but that is something where it prevents a turnover, and the Jets are able to get out of the zone, and that's something that they were having trouble with at times. So I thought he made a bunch of smart, subtle plays. Christian Reichel's a smart player, Sean. People are looking up, how come Reichel instead of Jeff Malott? Well, the Jets don't need someone. They're not asking someone to come up and play on a scoring line, even though they might have to at some point. They need someone that can be reliable defensively, maybe kill some penalties, make a bunch of smart plays. Reichel is not a huge banger in terms of body checking, but he gets involved physically. And he's a big, strong guy. Before he got hurt last year, Sean, I think it was impressive what Christian Reichel did with the Jets last year before he blocked that shot in the foot and then ended up on the shelf. This guy is a pretty smart guy. He's really got a high hockey IQ, works really hard, not a burner, but gets around just fine. He's got a lot of little subtleties to his game, and I think we're going to see him. People have been asking. Carson Kuhlman, he had one really nice net drive, and Jack Campbell made his best save of the night off of him, probably. Big left foot kick. But otherwise, Reichel's a guy who, could maybe jump up and maybe play a little bit with Scheifele and Adam Lowry if they keep the lines the way they are. See what happens. But I thought it was a really impressive season debut in terms of NHL season debut for Reichel in just over 11 minutes after he replaced Sam Gagner in the top six.
Yeah. I'm going to just throw one quick thing out there to kind of hammer the point home. If you think about it, the Colorado Avalanche were a team that missed Nazem Kadri, who had how many points last year for a stretch 90s, as they went down. Exactly. Right near, he came back right before they won the cup, but
so he got hurt in game 3 against Edmonton, and then he came back for game 3?
5?
4. Maybe, yeah. It was game 4, yep.
He scored the game winner in game 4, right? So he comes back for the last 2 of that series. But the last game he's not a factor, and we hear afterwards he's not a factor because he's in absolute agony. They couldn't believe he came back. But this is the kind of thing, you're talking about teams that lose a 90-point score out of their lineup and still keep rolling like nothing's happening because they're just so deep. That's where the Jets have to get to. I got to say a couple comments here. We're going to get out of the show right now because you got places to go. Scardy absolutely nailed stuff. Baba Jet, I love this kind of I don't have the comment that he put up, but his whole thing about can the Jets' confidence be taken away? That's a great question in itself because I think the Jets' confidence was taken away last season, and I do think through parts of this year, that is what Rick Bowness is fighting, the stuff that we saw over Christmas time. When the Jets look lackluster and they get into games and the other team goes on this swath like we saw against the Bruins, where the Bruins just took over the game for a period and 5 minutes or something like that. To me, that is the Jets, what they look like when they've had their confidence stolen away. So I think that's a great question as well. People, you are way too sharp for the night after New Year's to be making making comments like that. Good job with that. But we appreciate that you showed up for that. Ken's got to get going. You got lots of stuff going on. Ken, I appreciate you carving out the time today to do this, as I'm sure the audience does. Audience, I appreciate you joining us today and giving us all the great stuff that you gave us here today. Unbelievable stuff. Quickly, I never said anything about Reichel. I'll just say this. Is there a guy who has carved out more from the few opportunities he's been given in his time with the Jets than he has? That's a guy who has, I mean, just the fact that he's now way at the back of the line of guys getting pulled up, and he still just comes in and pulls off what he pulled off. I have a ton of admiration for a guy who handles his opportunities the way he does. Thank you so much to everybody. We're looking forward to this 2023. It's going to be a really fun year. We love spending it with you. We love that you take the time to come spend it with us. Thank you for your eyes and your ears and your participation. It means the world to us. 2022 was great for Kenny and Renny, and it was great because you all made it great. Who also made it great for us was our sponsors for us. That's Vittorio Rossi, TransCanada, the Johnston Group, Lou Ferlin, and Home Field. If you appreciate the conversations that are going on in these spaces, please appreciate those sponsors who fight to keep these conversations going in these spaces. It means a ton to us. Thank you to them. Thanks to everybody. Looking forward to talking to you after the next game. Hopefully your 2023 is off to a great start. Bye-bye, everybody.